Hello, dear polymer clay enthusiast. I'm Michaela from Learn Polymer Clay, and in today's tutorial I want to show you a different technique to make beautiful, realistic looking FAUX Lampwork beads. I'm working with white polymer clay that I have previously conditioned, and because I am making beads and we are going to press a lot on the beads and I am going to color them with alcohol inks, it's better to use gloves for this project. So as I said, I'm working with white polymer clay that I have previously conditioned, and then I rolled the clay into a ball in the middle of the palm, and then I used the side of my right hand to make like a neck for the bead and turn this bead into a drop bead. Then I decided to use glitter alcohol inks, and I'm going to use Clover green and tropical green, and I'm also going to use Sunbright Pinata yellow alcohol ink. You can use a brush, but I decided to use the droplets of the bottles of alcohol ink, and I'm applying lines from one side to the other side of the bead, not too close one to the other, because I am going to apply other lines in between with a different color, and I'm going to finish up by adding Sunbright yellow pinata in some areas. Of course, if you prefer, you can use a brush. And then while the inks are drying up, I am going to decorate a sheet of polymer clay, of white polymer clay that I passed through the setting number 4 of my Atlas pasta machine. I am going to decorate it with gold color metal leaf, and then I am going to use the rigid blade and cut out some thin strips of clay decorated with gold color metal leaf, but I'm going to pull on the clay, so I am going to end up with a crackled effect on these thin strips of polymer clay. And I want strips that are as thin as possible. And you can pull on the clay, but you'll get this crackle effect, and make the strip thinner if you want to. So before using these strips to decorate the bead, it's a good idea to use your blade and trim off the ends of the strip to have nice ends, nice and neat ends for these thin strips of polymer clay. I used my heat gun to speed up a little bit the process of the ink drying. And then I will just take one strip of clay decorated with gold color metal leaf, ideally a thin one, a very thin one, and I'm going to apply it on top of the bead from one side to the other side, and I'm going to press a little bit on the ends and on the on this sheet of polymer, on this cutout polymer clay strip, and I'm going to press on the ends but also in the middle, and make sure that these strips of decorated clay are pressed into the bead, into the base, and I will apply 4 or 5 such strips around the bead to make a beautiful embellishment for the bead. And in case the strip is too long, I am going to use the blade and trim off the excess. And for some beads I used the blade. You can use a dotting tool and pressed the clay at the ends into the bead to have nice edges for these beads. I'm making sure that the hole that I've made in the bead is large enough, and I won't have any difficulty to take out the toothpick after baking the bead. And then I put the beads into the oven for 45 minutes, and I baked them on a skewer, and I put the skewer on a metal cutter, and I also tinted them with an aluminum disposable pan because I'm working with white clay. And then I let the clay cool down, and then I decided to use resin to embellish the beads. For some of the beads I am going to apply resin with a brush, the usual style of applying resin on top of the bead, and this is a good idea to apply resin or varnish on top of this kind of beads, because resin or dimensional varnish will protect the metal leaf, and also will protect these strips of clay, especially resin. And for the other beads I decided to try out some silicone molds that I have for making large round beads. And I really like the look of the finished pieces. So in order to be able to put the beads inside such a mold and then be able to use them in a design, I decided to put a head pin. Then I put a bead cap, a small bead cap with an interesting design, and then I put the bead, and then I opened up these silicone molds and I put the bead inside. And I am going to use UV resin and a droplet, and I'm going to fill these molds, and from time to time I'm going to check from the side to see the level of the resin inside the mold. And in order to fill this mold with resin, you just have to press a little bit on the sides, and you will have like a gap, like an opening, and you can insert this droplet in the opening, and then fill the mold with UV resin. For the beads on which I applied resin with a brush, I've made sure that there were no resin drippings, and then I used the bucket lamp to start curing the resin, and then I used my larger nail art lamp and I cured the beads for 8-9 minutes. And then I just used round nose pliers to make a double loop, and thus I am able to use these beautiful beads to make jewelry pieces. So I hope that you like this idea, and I hope that you are going to use it in your work with polymer clay. And thank you for watching the tutorial, and stay tuned for more inspiration for work with polymer clay.